Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna introduce to you another poem of Li Bai, which is written 2 years before he passed away. It's called To the Royal Inspector Lu Xuzhou, an Idyll on the Lu Mountains to a folk song. I've always been like the madman of Chu, singing satires on the Confucian ideals. In my hand is a cane as green as jade. As I farewell the Tower of Yellow Storks at daybreak, distance matters not as I go around visiting the 5 eminent peaks hoping to find sages, for I love climbing renowned mountains in my living days. The Lu Mountains divide the land with the archer drawing bow overhead. The landscape expands like a screen of 9 folds embellished with clouds in the sky. Their ripple reflections of mountains and the lake shining green dazzles. The stone gate summit sits like a palace flanked by 2 peaks by its sides. Waters stream from hills like the Milky Way overhung, straddled by 3 stone bridges. Over there cascades a waterfall off the Peak of Fragrant Furnace on the other side. Surrounded and barricaded by precipices among boundless fog, I feel like I am taking flight. Mountains are brilliantly green and clouds aglow in the morning sun. There is not a bird on the wing in the vast domain of the Wu skies. Having surmounted such height to look far into the world, there the Yangtze rushes away spectacularly, never to return. The weather is about to change as thousands of miles of glowing clouds drift in the wind. Waterfalls cap mountains like snow. Down they flow on their separate ways into 9 rivers. I come up with a lyric on the Lu Mountains to a folk song, as I my moments in the Lu Mountains enjoy. By the stone mirror, I reflect on myself to clear my mind. Where Master Xie left his footprints has long been covered by layers of moss. Maybe in order to the worldly forget, I should resort to alchemy, to help me accumulate intrinsic strength and focus on the essence of Taoist practice. I seem to see a sage riding among colorful clouds. She has a lotus in her hand as she makes her way towards the celestial palace. I've made a pact with you to journey to the farthest, beyond the 9 levels of skies, and join the legendary luau on our way to sightsee heaven's grandness. Now the original Chinese text. 庐山遥寄卢侍御虚舟，李白。我本楚狂人，凤歌笑孔丘。手持绿玉杖，朝别黄鹤楼。5月寻仙不辞远，一生好入名山游。庐山秀出南斗旁，屏风九叠云锦张。影落明湖清带光，金阙前开2峰长，银河倒挂30梁。香炉瀑布遥相望，回崖踏嶂凌苍苍。翠影红霞映朝日，鸟飞不到无天长。登高壮观天地间，大江茫茫去不还。黄云万里动风色，白波九道流雪山。号为庐山谣，兴因庐山发。闲窥石镜清我心，谢公行处苍苔没。早服还丹无事情，琴心3叠道出城。遥见仙人彩云里，手把芙蓉朝玉京。仙妻汉漫酒该上，愿接卢敖游太清。So last time we talked about Li Bai's setbacks in his life and how his ambition was not acknowledged by the emperor and he never managed to become an impactful politician throughout his life. This time I'm introducing this poem that Li Bai wrote in his late years when he was an elder man. The background of this poem is when Li Bai was traveling to Lu Mountain or Lushan in the year of 760 AD when he was 59 years old, 2 years before his death. Lushan is a very famous mountain in the middle of China where Li Bai had traveled many times in his life already. This year was the second year when he was exempted from his political exile. So revisiting Lushan was a very meaningful mark in his life because every time he visited there, he would almost for sure leave a poem behind that revealed his attitude of life at that very moment. This visit to Lushan was no exception. So what is Li Bai talking about in this moment, reaching the end of his life? The first several sentences described his looking back in his younger self. He says, "I've always been like the madman of Chu, singing satires on Confucian ideals. In my hand is a cane as green as jade, as I farewell the Tower of Yellow Storks at daybreak. Distance matters not as I go around visiting the 5 eminent peaks, hoping to find sages, for I love climbing renowned mountains in my living days." The madman of Chu is referring to Lu Tong, who was a Chu person living in the spring and autumn period in Chinese history. He was considered mad for showing contempt for the king and Confucius and politics at that time, and Li Bai said he was like that man when he was young and was keen about traveling and exploring the world. Here he says, "Distance matters not as I go around visiting the 5 eminent peaks, hoping to find sages, for I love climbing renowned mountains in my living days." So he's not climbing the mountains to prove anything. He just loves traveling. This is his human nature. However, we know that this is not true since we have learned that Li Bai has actually paid a lot of effort in trying to pursue fame and a political successful career. So the following sentences depict the beauty of Lushan. Here I found some pictures of Lushan to give you an idea of what the lines are describing. I have traveled to Lushan once, and it was truly an extremely beautiful place with forests, mountain views, lakes, and waterfalls. Li Bai says that surrounded and barricaded by precipices among boundless fog, I feel like I am taking flight. The philosophy here is that Chinese people tend to believe that human beings are part of nature and nature resembles the ultimate truth of the universe. So being able to project yourself into nature and become part of it is a very lifting experience, and it enlarges one's true small self. So singing about the grandness of Lushan and the natural sceneries equals with a singing over the grandness of your own life and history. Li Bai goes on to say, "By the stone mirror, I reflect on myself to clear my mind, where Master Xie left his footprints has long been covered by layers of moss." Master Xie refers to the poet of Xie Lingyun, who was also traveling to Lushan, and these lines are an acknowledgement of the shortness and uncertainties of life. In light of this uncertain nature of life, Li Bai seeks the help from religion, Taoism. Maybe in order to the worldly forget, I should resort to alchemy to help me accumulate intrinsic strength and focus on the essence of Taoist practice. I seem to see a sage riding among colorful clouds. She has a lotus in her hand as she makes her way towards the celestial palace. I have made a pact with you to journey to the farthest beyond the 9 levels of skies and join the legendary luau on our way to sightsee heaven's grandness. Here, it's very hard to understand, but the words of colorful clouds and celestial palace and 9 levels of skies, these are all part of the world view of Taoism. These sentences are apparently telling us a lot about Li Bai's religious beliefs. He hopes that Taoism and Taoist practices can relieve him from this unsatisfying realistic life and liberate himself into the other spiritual world where he could meet the fairies in heaven or accomplish some other purposes that's not just the political aspirations that he used to have. So this is a poem with very complicated feeling. Everything is mixed up. Li Bai was seemingly mocking on Confucianism and expressing his aspiration for Taoism practices, yet his description of the mountains and the beauty of nature suggests that he does not hate the realistic world that he was living in. In my personal understanding, Lushan in this poem serves as a Li Bai's spiritual hometown and an embodiment of the ideal way of life. But Lushan is not purely the spiritual world for living. It's in the middle of a spiritual world and the mundane world that we live in. And Li Bai has every reason to establish this contradiction between the human society or the political world with nature, because in the year of 760 AD, Tang Dynasty was going through what we call the Anlushan Rebellion or Anshi Zhiluan that marked the starting point of the downward trend of one of the greatest dynasties in Chinese history. Almost half of the country was lost to the rebellion force and lots of people died or lost their hometowns. It was a traumatic experience for anyone living in that time. It was not a good timing for poets who enjoyed a very long period of peacefulness in the capital city that allowed them to write beautiful poems. Many people sought spiritual liberation in Buddhism and Taoism simply because it was the only thing they could do. You can even suggest that the fact that Li Bai was able to write a poem this beautiful back then is a miracle itself, because he didn't mention any sadness in his lines. But he had every reason to do so, which is also why lots of commentators see Li Bai's positive and honest personality in this poem. However, as I introduced before, Li Bai's life was nothing near a perfect life. He had many regrets, but we are always able to find some miracles, quote unquote, and beauty in his poems, because he was not a man whining or complaining all the time, although he had every right to do so. Taoism might have worked well for him in this poem. He seemed to have found comfort and aspirations in his final years, which is indeed a blessing. If you could read the Chinese characters yourself, you will be able to directly feel the beauty of Li Bai's writing. And if you have a chance, I do recommend traveling to Lushan. It's a very beautiful place. It's a combination, a perfect combo of the nature of beauty and history and literature. I'm sure when you visit there and read this poem again, you will have some new feelings. So hope you have enjoyed this poem so far, and I'll see you next time.